Hello, and welcome. In this episode, we are exploring how anxious attachment tendencies show up in our platonic connections, including female friendships, male friendships, and we're also going to touch on the pattern of abandoning our friends for romantic love. And before we get into the content of the episode, I just want to introduce myself as your host. My name's Johanna. I'm a somatic therapy facilitator and also trained in internal family systems, which is sometimes called parts work. You don't need to know what any of that means. So what might be more relevant to you is that I've taken these tools that I have and I have niched in supporting women to heal anxious attachment tendencies. And I work with women who see their patterns and know and have maybe read the books and are saving the carousels on Instagram and listening to podcasts like this, but still find yourself spiraling in self-doubt, questioning your worth, playing small, falling into people-pleasing tendencies, even though you also feel that you have this power and capability in yourself. So this is especially happening when it comes to love, to approval, to being chosen, and I help you come back to yourself, to get secure in who you are on the inside and the outside, and to also find a place within yourself where there is no urgency to chase connection in any way that would leave you feeling empty. And in fact, when you journey down this work, you get to have this experience of realizing that the relationships that you attract get to be better, more committal, more communication, more love, more claim than you have ever felt in the past. And that is an inside job. It comes from the inner work that we do. So that is me, and that is who I'm here to help. And as I said, today we're going to talk about anxious attachment in friendships. So let's just start with a little painting of the canvas. How do we know if our anxious attachment tendencies are showing up in our friendships? Some signs to look out for would be feeling really hurt or panicked if a friend is taking longer than usual to respond to a message, even if there's not any real conflict going on. It's just the passing of time that feels really anxiety-inducing. If you are replaying conversations in your head, worrying that you said something wrong or that your friend is secretly mad at you. If you notice you have a really deep fear of being left out or replaced or forgotten, even in a friendship that you know is actually healthy or balanced or consistent. You might also find that you overgive or people please to try and prove your worth to keep the friendship, quote, secure. Maybe you get jealous or triggered if your friend is close with someone else, even if you don't say that out loud. You might struggle with boundaries, either not setting them or feeling abandoned if someone sets one with you. And you might put all of your emotional needs onto one friend and kind of expect them to hold a lot of space in the way that we sometimes also do with romantic partners. So if you're feeling that any of that is coming up for you, then the rest of this episode is certainly going to be helpful. And I want to talk a little bit about the epistemology, I don't actually know if that's right, of anxious attachment. So why it happens. And anxious attachment forms when our experience of connection was inconsistent, unpredictable, or conditional. So maybe you had moments of really deep closeness with your caregivers or your family, but then there was a withdrawal or a perceived withdrawal. Maybe you had to earn attention by being helpful or quiet or agreeable or high achieving. Maybe your emotions were labeled as too much or your needs were labeled as a lot. Maybe you were the one holding a lot of responsibility even as a child. And if that's the environment that we are growing up in, then our nervous system starts to learn this painful equation, which is something like love and uncertainty are the same, or they go hand in hand. If I want presence from someone I love, it requires me to perform or be a certain way. And if I take control over myself, that's when I will feel safety. So what happens when we grow up? We crave closeness like anyone, but we might have a bracing for loss and assuming that they're going to leave, a fear of being abandoned. So we long for this trust, but we prepare in some ways to be hurt. Can also show up as wanting to rest, for example, but not believing that it's safe to slow down. And when we have that experience happening on a nervous system level, we're likely going to experience a lot of self-doubt. And this self-doubt can certainly leak into our friendships, either through the feeling that we have or the assumptions that we have, or through the people that we attract. So if my nervous system believes that love just comes with uncertainty, or I have to people please in order to get love, then I might end up attracting friends who will fulfill the other side of that dynamic, who will only tolerate me when I am behaving a certain way, or they only want one side of me. So I want to ask you the question, do you have a secure friend? Can you think of someone in your life who you believe at their core, on their attachment level, they are secure, or they're behaving securely in your dynamic? And what does safety feel like in that friendship? How do you know that it's secure? So signs of a secure friend would be mutual respect. This means they're not jabbing at you, they're not like jokingly putting you down, they're not being passive aggressive. There's mutual respect. They care about what you're up to and they want the best for you. There's consistency in their availability to, hang out with you and support you, encouragement of your growth, like I said, and not just support if you're in a crisis. So it's not that our friends need to be available 24/7 by any means, but when it's secure, we don't doubt the bond. We trust that they are there for us. And when we think about the friends that we attract/choose, they are often a mirror of our family dynamics in some way. So what sometimes happens is that we start to unconsciously recreate dynamics from our relationship with our mother or our sister or any other predominant female person in our life. And this is where I'm talking about you are a girl and these are your girlfriends, okay? So sometimes what we're trying to do is we're either going to attract people that are just treat us just like our sisters do or treat us just like our mom does, and we try and fix something that is not fixed in our family relationship. So it can be worth reflecting on the role that you tend to hold with your siblings or with your mother, for example. So are you, and just to give it like a label, right? The forgotten one. Are you the one that had to compete for love? Are you the one that had to work harder in school than everyone else? Were you the caregiver? Were you the extra responsible one? Just feeling what that is for you and considering how does that maybe show up in my friendships now? So these early patterns are probably going to bleed a little bit into our adult friendships because in some ways, even if the role wasn't ideal for us to be the caregiver, it's comfortable for us. So when we're now in a group of girls, for example, we will continue to fall into that role, even if it's maybe not in alignment with our needs or our boundaries. And if you had a complicated relationship with your mother or your sister and it was marked by criticism or comparison or emotional absence or enmeshment, then for sure it's common to unconsciously replay those dynamics in our female friendships. So we might overgive, overfunction to try and earn this love, or we might feel really untrusting of female friendships and stay a little bit distant or a little bit guarded, really judgmental of other women. And ultimately, it's a way to protect ourselves because we're fearing some rejection or some betrayal. So then our female friendships can become really charged because of these old wounds, but they also hold the power and the possibility to repattern what it means to trust the feminine and trust women and heal the sister wound. Maybe you've heard that term before, and be supported and feel safe with other women. But that requires us to be in our own work and to lean into that in whatever way that means for you. So healing this is for sure powerful. So we kind of talked about what a secure friend looks like and how we sometimes attract or play out old dynamics with female friends that makes it hard to really experience that secure bond. And now I want to flip it to the other side of the coin because it's easy to sit here and be like, oh, this friend that I have, she is mirroring my mother and I am pining for her approval because she'll never give it to me. But I have to also look at myself and we have to ask ourselves, are we being a good friend? Or are we just looking for someone to heal our wound basically and to be the thing that we didn't have? Are we offering trust and space and truth, but also boundaries, and also speaking our needs and our truth? And are we offering celebration of our friends? If we are caught up in energy of comparison and jealousy, then that's a sticky thing to bring into a friendship, even if you would never say it out loud. Is that the energy you're holding, one that is insecure in your body? So can we work to be the friend that we also want to attract, right? On all levels, not just in how we behave or how we talk, but how we are actually, what are we actually embodying as we show up as a woman in our friendships? And also, can we hold space for someone's change or their evolution without taking it personally? Because wow, when we start to have these multiple decade-long friendships, people are going to change and grow, and it's such a gift to be able to give someone that space to change and grow, even if it shifts the relationship. And of course, being able to speak if that's something you need or desire in return. And so a good place to reflect also might be to just consider, how might my friendships that feel a bit wounded or a bit charged, what would be one little step that would make us together be a more secure relationship? If you are in the position where you feel really, really dependent on your friends, that you need them to answer you quickly and be there, and you're maybe calling them every single day, or something where you know you're leaning on them a little bit too much, I want you to get curious about that and just feel into what part of you is asking that friend to be everything for you. What part of you feels panic when she isn't available? And it's probably a young part. And a young part is in, it's part of your inner child. What is she seeking? What is she aching for? What is she desperate and grabbing, trying to get from this other person that is your friend? Because when you can identify that need, it starts to basically clean up the energy right away. And when we are unconsciously acting from this energy of, I need to get something from this friend, or I'm jealous of her, but I have to be nice to her, she has power over me, whatever the story is, we are A, giving away our power, B, we're actually in a trauma response, but it allows us to identify what it is we need and start to ensure that that need isn't just being met from this one person, that we are self-soothing around this need and also giving it to ourselves, and maybe diversifying the relationships in which we get our needs met. So if we're putting all of this pressure on our best friend or this one friend to meet all of our needs, our need for connection and, maybe like hearing all of our drama or companionship, if we're putting all that on one person, that's intense no matter what. We should not be doing that in anywhere in our life, even our romantic partner. And this is something as well where when you get into a romantic partnership and you're living with them and you're spending every day with them, it is easy to start to put all of our needs on that person, but it puts a lot of pressure on them. And often one person cannot meet all of our needs in the most perfect way anyway. So I want you to consider that a more balanced way of relating is to have friends, maybe family members also, ideally if things are healthy there, and romantic partners where you get different needs met. And there's a professor that I really like. His name is Dr. John DeMartini, and he talks about how we are always getting our needs met consciously or unconsciously. But if it's unconsciously, we sometimes do it in ways that aren't really in alignment with our values or who we are, but we're always just trying to get our needs met as a human. So we're looking for what's the easiest path or what's the closest path, like how can I get this need met? And when we're a little more conscious of it, I can be like, oh, well, my friend so-and-so, she really meets my need for play. I can be so playful with her. But with my other friend, we're actually more businessy. We talk a lot about like what we're creating and messaging and mindset and growth, and she super motivates me. And then my partner obviously meets my need for intimacy and physical connection. So I'm not trying to make one person fit everything. And the anxious attachment system tends to want there to be one person or one solution for us to pour all of our attention or all of our love into, in hopes that we get all of our needs met. So changing gears a little, I want to talk about male platonic friendships. And I'm talking about this through the lens of a cisgender heterosexual woman who would pursue male romantic relationships, but is also maybe pursuing male platonic friendships. And of course, if you are gay and you're a woman, then maybe you would think about this as female friendships with straight women, that would be the example. Which, to be honest, is something I'm not the most familiar with, but I trust that wherever your sexuality lies, you can still consider what I'm about to bring here. So the question is, do we use male friendships as placeholders for unavailable love? And by that I mean, are we avoiding intimacy by having male friends? So we get our needs met in the way of wanting to have masculine energy around, for example, but it saves us from not having to be super vulnerable or intimate with men. So sometimes we unconsciously choose close male friendships to fill a gap that may have been left by an emotionally unavailable father or an absent father. And even these friendships can feel really emotionally charged, but not necessarily romantic. But they can also get this more than casual thing because they offer a sense of safety or admiration or protection that we may have longed for as a child. So sometimes we can create really, really sticky situations where we are getting certain needs met, but part of us doesn't want to go get those same needs met for safety, for example, or protection or leadership from a romantic interest because the risk is actually too high. So this is a pretty niche specific example, but if you just find yourself feeling maybe scared of dating or intimidated of dating and feel really fearful that you can't open up to men, as soon as you feel romantic interest, you really close down, this would just be something to explore and to consider. Am I using my male friendships as a way to potentially avoid dating? Am I getting my needs met from a male friendship that actually, maybe he wants more, but you aren't available to give more? We want our relationships to be really clear and really clean and really boundaried and really loving. And they can get sticky if we are acting out old wounds. So it can become a pretty clever way to avoid true intimacy because we get this proximity to the masculine energy without the vulnerability that comes with romantic connection. Now, one other piece of this topic, this is sort of the other side, which is where when a romantic interest comes into the picture, we ditch our friends. And this, I don't know if I can say that this happens more when we have secure friendships versus when we are anxiously attached to our friends, but I would bet that this is the case. So if you're someone who is like, no, my friendships are actually super solid, but when there's a man around, I kind of ditch them, then that's what we're going to talk about right now. And this is actually the part of my own friendships where my anxious attachment would show up the most. So it wasn't jealousy between friends or any like weird stuff or drama, but that I would pull back from them the moment that a man entered the picture. So I wouldn't ghost them completely, but I would just quietly become a little less available. I would leave evening plans early if he wanted to hang out. I wanted to keep myself really available. And obviously, I was really excited about the new connection, and that's why. And at the same time, I could feel that what I was doing wasn't super nice. And I would try and walk this fine line where it would be, just the right amount where they probably wouldn't notice, or it wouldn't be for long enough that they would notice, but I could feel that it wasn't really in integrity with how I wanted to show up in my friendships. So when we abandon our friendships, anytime romance enters the room, we're kind of sending ourselves a message that only one kind of love matters, that being chosen in romantic partnership is the most important thing above all else. And we really miss out, if that's what we're believing, on the richness of being held in multiple relationships, like I said before, because each of these relationships with friends, family, romantic partners are going to feed a different important part of who you are. And if I want to be a secure friend to my friendships, then I cannot see my friendships as this sort of placeholder until there's a romantic partner in my life. Having and keeping those healthy and diversified, steady friendships is going to be the foundation that can keep us steady when love changes or unravels, or when heartbreak happens, or when we're growing in a relationship, or when we are moving through big chapters in a romantic relationship. It's so important to have a support system that is not just our partner. So no matter what this episode has floated up into your mind, there's a couple things that we can do from here. One would be that there might be a need to audit your friendships and consider who is really showing up for you in a way that a friend should. Because again, if we created friendships based on needing to or wanting to prove our worth and ended up attracting some friends who were actually just mirroring old wounding and old dynamics, and it's not a secure relationship, and maybe they're even have an avoidant attachment system going on and yours is anxious, and it's really like this toxic loop of drama, then it's probably time to communicate something, set a boundary, or move away from the friendship. So maybe your friendships need a little bit of an audit. Second thing would be to consider yourself as a friend, and not just how you show up for other people, but are you being a good friend to yourself? Is your inner talk mirroring what you would want from a friend and how you would want them to talk to you? Is it mirroring how you would talk to a friend? So before we expect other people to be a certain way or give us a certain amount of attention, we have to ask ourselves, have I been giving myself the attention that I need? Have I been staying with me? Have I been nurturing me? Have I been listening to me? So what does friendship look like in your own heart, with your own needs, with your own boundaries? And when you have that self-connection and that self-friendship, and maybe you've heard this idea of being your own best friend as a path to healing, you will become generally less clingy, less jealous, less needy, if those are things that you experience, less anxious, and more rooted, more secure, more magnetic, more radiant, because you feel safe within yourself. And so much of the work of healing any of our anxious attachment tendencies or any of our old wounds and triggers is being able to stay with ourselves in our experience in a way that is intimate enough to get to know what we actually need so that we can take care of that for ourselves. You may have heard me use the term reparenting, which is when we become the adult as a friend, as a parent, as the mother, as the father that we needed, and we take care of ourselves in that way. It's a huge project. It's a huge project, and sometimes we need extra practice, extra tools, extra reflection in order to get clear on what that actually looks like for us, in order to uncover the missing needs, in order to uncover the pockets of trauma, the vulnerable and tender parts of ourselves that are still hurting, that have needs. And these are the tools that I get to give the women in my membership. And the membership is a place where you learn how to integrate and embody all of these things that you are learning on a mental level. So when you're listening and you realize, wow, I've read books and I know these terms that she's using, but I still feel in my body, I get anxious, I chase, I abandon myself, I people please, then it's just because it's not that you need to even necessarily learn more. It's that in your body, in your subconscious, these patterns are still playing out. So we have to do real embodied work, real somatic work. Somatic means of the body, basically. And if you're ready to do that somatic and relational and nervous system work, then definitely come join us in the membership. There's nothing else that you have to do really besides show up and be willing to take the steps that I guide you through there. The membership is $77 a month. It's priced that way to make it accessible, while at the same time not to be another $5 a month subscription that you're just going to ignore and not do anything about because it doesn't really hurt when it shows up on your credit card, even though you never did anything with it. This is what I see as enough of an investment where you want to show up for yourself in it while not breaking the bank. It costs less than one therapy session and you're going to get so much support, access to me, like I said, live calls, Q&A calls, and it's so fruitful. You will be surprised at how well you connect and relate to the other women in there. So talk about an opportunity to heal the sister wound by being more in connection with other women. You certainly don't have to do it alone. So the link for the membership is in the show notes or over at my Instagram. I would love to have you, and I'm looking forward to meeting you inside.